Join lifelong Star Wars fans Lauren and Steph as they dive into the world of Star Wars fan fiction, discussing a new fic each month, breaking down the writing style, characters, canon relationship, and more. This is your source for Star Wars fan fiction recommendations. So come on and find out why it's one hell of a fanfic.
Hey y'all, I'm Lauren and welcome to One Hell of a Fanfic, where we talk about a new Star Wars fanfic every month. And I'm here with Steph tonight as usual. How's it going, Steph?
Oh, it's going fantastic. I think it's going better than every other month you've actually asked me that.
Oh, really? Okay. I like the sound of that. You having some summer fun?
You could call it that. I'm at least enjoying the heat more than I know they are down in, say, Houston, where it's like 103.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, even here, like even in I don't know, in the Midwest, even where we are, it is too much for me. I'm already in hibernation mode. I'm not even going outside and it's only June. So I went on a walk earlier today and I was like, this is horrible. I'm ready for winter.
It's only like 87 here. Only.
Ugh. Only. Still too high. Still too much. Well, anyway, so do you want to tell us about our fanfic that we read this month?
Yeah. So this month we read Late-Night Interruption by Dettiot, and my goodness, did I love this fanfiction. It was so wholesome, and it fixed all of the things, and it was lovely. It was finished back in 2020. It had only 3,600 words, and for those of you, because I know everyone cares, it was a complete 0 on our spice level scale. It was just cute and adorable, and so I'm creating a whole new scale. I'm gonna call it the wholesome level scale, and it's like a 1,000. We're gonna put in.
Oh,
1,000.
I love that. We got to add wholesome scale to our routine that we've got.
So, in canon relation, it is alternate universe, kind of canon divergent. Everything is the same up until a point, and then it diverts completely diverts. And we have the typical tropes that we seem to run into, being found family, and this one is fanfics also.
Gotta love a fanfics.
So, what is this story about?
So I'll go ahead and, as usual, I'll read off the author summary for us. And the author summary goes, when Obi-Wan receives a late night comm from Sabe, he's not sure what to expect, but what he learns will change many lives and the fate of the Republic. So that's just a little taste of kind of where we're starting from, but soon we find out. This isn't a spoiler. It's like in the first chapter. Soon we find out that Padme has gone into labor prematurely, and then we go from there. But why would you say people should read this fanfic?
Everything I just said. It is so cute and heartwarming, and everything that you go and you were like, man, so many things went wrong in Star Wars that could have been avoided. It just like cuts that off and goes, here, everything's better now. It's also incredibly easy to read. Not very often can I sit down and just finish something. I normally start reading and then I wander off and then I come back and read more and then I wander off. No, this one I sat down and I was like, wow, and just kept reading. How about you?
Yeah, it definitely was a page turner in that way. Partially, I think because it just felt good to read that that it was like I felt good while I was reading it, so I wanted to keep reading, which I mean, how could you complain about that, right? I would say like in addition to that, I guess getting more into detail, I liked how it explores the potential of like what Anakin would be like in the light. Like what would happen if he actually did get everything that he wanted before Palpatine had a chance to take it away from him, and who would he be? And we see like a very different side of Anakin come out because of that.
Move on to the next section, which has spoilers. So let's talk about, because other people have brought it up, we should do a more thorough what happened in this fan fiction. For those people who are just kind of jumping in and want to know what happened, don't want to have to read it.
So, fair.
So what actually happened in this story is, like Lauren mentioned, the babies come early, and Sabe calls Obi-Wan, she's trying to get a hold of Anakin, but Obi-Wan has told, who was it, Rex? I think it was Rex. It was such a small part of the
Yeah.
story, to not
Yeah.
let anyone contact Anakin while he's sleeping because he's just running himself ragged. So she ends up calling Obi-Wan, and one of my favorite scenes in the entire story happens where she's like, she has to tell Obi-Wan that Anakin's not only the father of these children, that he's married.
Going forward from there in the rest of the story, we're seeing sort of like the domino effect of what happens after this point, because Anakin getting so the act of Padme going into labor prematurely, it changes the whole course of events that we see in canon, because Anakin is able to be with her rather than being with Palpatine during this time. And Anakin finding out from Obi-Wan, it gives them a chance to have a conversation. So pretty much what happens is just like a whole domino effect from there, and everything that we see while we're dealing with the same canon characters and like the same circumstances that we see in canon, we see it play out very differently, kind of like sort of like the concept of the butterfly effect, where if you change one thing, everything after that's going to change. The plot is very focused around the characters' feelings. Like there is like circumstances of what happens, which is Padme giving birth prematurely. But rather than there being like a ton of action in this fic or anything like that that we sometimes see in Star Wars fanfics, we're more focused on how are the characters reacting to this and how is this influencing their relationships with each other. So it's very character driven in that way. But what I really liked about this and the way that this was all set up is that the beginning and like the background leading up to Padme going into labor, and it's structured in such a way that like the fact that Obi-Wan and Anakin are together when this happens, and the fact that Anakin has been running himself ragged and Obi-Wan says don't put any comms through to him, like he needs to sleep, all of those circumstances, it makes it to where Obi-Wan had to find out, like, because for him to get the news to relay to Anakin that Padme needs him, Sabe was pretty much forced to tell him like everything. And so I thought that was really smartly done, like how the author like arranged those circumstances. So that was one thing I really liked about this one.
I really liked how they stuck to the canon personalities and happenings prior to that point, because we do see with a lot of fan fiction they kind of augment the characters' personalities, but this one really sticks to it, even to the point of having to go and fix some of the plot holes that we see in canon, like how in the world did Padme not know she was having twins? And I like how this one right out.
With that type of medical care that they had, you know.
Right. So then in the fan fiction they explain that she was trying to keep everything hidden. So she didn't go see any sort of healers. She went and she only saw like medical droids, which I still feel like may have been able to scan for it, but hey, that helped to fix it. This fan fiction also really was rather realistic when it came to what childbirth looked like. They didn't go into details, but I feel like the author may have had babies before, or at least been around pregnant people, because the way they described how giving birth feels and what that looks like, they even went into the just to briefly mention that there is a time after birth where things have to be cleaned up, and not everything talks about that. Normally you see TV shows these days and they're like, oh, push, then suddenly everything, you've got a 3-month-old baby in your arm and everything's clean. No, this fan fiction
Right.
it really went into like the realities of how things looked, and it added to the believability of the rest of the story, which, like you said, is kind of dives into how people are feeling and what they're thinking, because that's how we view this fan fiction, is through that lens. It's third person, I believe, where you get to like see what they're thinking, and they're kind of talking to themselves.
Yeah, it's like we're seeing like their thought processes of them having to work out like these big changes, big pieces of news that they're receiving, making sense of it all, which it's good to see that thought process like in this much detail. But what did you think about the characters in this one? I know you previously said that you liked it how like they weren't like super augmented in this one, but like did you have any other feelings about them as you were reading it?
I like what they did with some of the side characters. They did stick to canon. They also, I like that they've added in some of the characters that have previously died, and in specific, Satine. That added to the wholesomeness to all of this to me. I love that they brought her in and they fixed her death to make it not a death, which is just so great. But I like what some of the things that they did with the characters and just really how they showed how they went through the situations that they had already been through, and it kind of explained how they were feeling through the things that we've already seen, but in canon couldn't have felt.
And I also liked to like thinking just about like canon comparisons with characters. I thought it was cool how like I don't know if this was intentional or not, but when I was reading this, especially with Anakin's character, I felt more like I was reading the Clone Wars TV show version of Anakin rather than like Revenge of the Sith Anakin. And I thought that was cool because I know that choice was like the choice to portray Anakin's more like playful side and like his kind of like cheerful and like arrogance and like that side of him. I know that was like a deliberate choice that they made for that show rather than like, the very sad and like kind of burnt out person that we see by Revenge of the Sith. So I thought it was cool that like we're seeing that side of Anakin, which I feel like in fanfic, I haven't read a lot of fanfics that are focusing on that side of Anakin. So that was cool to see that here.
You're absolutely right. Most of the time we do see more of that angsty, sad boy that's nothing's gone right in his life and he lost his mom, which we do see a little bit in there where it addresses that. But you're absolutely right. It has that lighthearted feel. He's still playful and he pokes at Obi-Wan and runs up towards a speeder to get there faster for whatever reason. And Obi-Wan's like, but why? You're too old for this.
Yeah.
But it's so in character for, you're right, the Clone Wars era.
Yeah. Did you feel like I mean like I guess so like thinking about those two characters also the two sides of Anakin, I guess you could say. Also when I was reading it too, like I felt like at the very beginning of this fic, I felt like okay, like angsty Anakin is going to be here because of the way he's kind of like laying in bed like ruminating on everything. And then as soon as he gets the reassurance from Obi-Wan that like I have your back when him and Obi-Wan have that conversation. It felt like there was like a very noticeable shift after that point. And then we had like fun Anakin going forward. Did you also have that experience too where it was like totally like night and day?
Absolutely, yeah. There was like it was like they solidified them, that the brotherhood between the two of them. And it was like everything was right in his world suddenly, and he's having babies, and Obi-Wan and him are fine. Oh my goodness, so much exciting things, and like he took off like a kid, and it was cute to read. Did you have any deep emotional reaction to any of this fan fiction?
I did. I mean, what I really this is sort of building off of what we were just talking about with the, the difference in Anakin, but I was thinking about how if he had had Obi-Wan by his side during all of this and like how much of an influence that had on him and his whole outlook shifted like that, I feel like even that alone would have been enough to like change the course of things going forward. So that was something that I kept coming back to that as I was reading this, was just thinking about how like if he knew that Obi-Wan was with him, then like so much would have been different.
Right. They even bring it up in the fic itself, where when they were battling with Palpatine, where he's like, no, Obi-Wan can't be here. This is going to change everything.
Oh, yes, they do. Oh, they do say that. Yeah, and that line like totally just sums it up.
Yep.
And I mean, also Padme not dying. I mean, of course, that also had like a big impact as
That,
well.
that small little
But
detail.
just that little detail. But like, even I feel like even if she had died, I mean, this is a big theory. So maybe you might disagree with me on this, but it almost made me feel like if she had died and he still knew that Obi-Wan was with him like that, I almost wonder if like he would have taken that better instead of feeling like his only choice was to turn to Palpatine.
No, no, I agree with you, especially after reading Brotherhood and kind of seeing their relationship and reading this fan fiction. Yes, he would have had Obi-Wan to help be by his side. He would, and then he would have had the twins, and that would it especially because the way he described the force feeling that he had of the twins with them just being pure light. He seemed to want to gravitate towards it and care for them.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I don't think he would have been able to do anything that would have jeopardized their future and like their well-being, even if Padme wasn't there anymore. I don't think he would have been able to bring himself to do it. At least this version of Anakin.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Canon Anakin, that's a whole different conversation.
Right.
So did you have like a favorite scene in this?
Oh, I had so many. It was such a short fan fiction, but there was so many things I just had to chuckle at. Um, okay, so one of the things I liked that the author did was during the birth scene, Anakin is reaching out in the force to the babies because they're about to be born, and he talks to them, and he can feel them like responding to him. And I thought that was super cute. But if you read toward the end of that chapter, the author mentions that they really loved that there's a scene in The Last Command, which is a Legends book about Leia when she's giving birth to Jason and Jaina, and how she pulled it from that, an inspiration of that scene. And I thought that was just lovely.
Yeah, that Legends inspiration was really cool. I love it when it's when we're taking details from different parts of Star Wars lore and putting them all together. That's always really fun.
Another thing the author did, which I thought was funny, was one of the end of the chapter. She's like, "After all, it's Star Wars. Nothing makes sense." As an
Yes.
explanation, I was like, "Yes, this is very true."
I liked that too because I think and they were saying that in reference to the explanation of the Darksaber and why the Darksaber didn't kill Satine. And they were like, you know what? I like it that this is the explanation, and that's the way it is. I just loved that little like that little sidebar in there.
How about you? Did you have a favorite scene?
Yeah, I would say for me, it's I guess a lot of this fanfic is hinging on this, but or for me at least, but that first scene of Obi-Wan finding out the truth and he's shocked and hurt and Anakin feels bad that Obi-Wan is hurt and they both in that scene are they like Obi-Wan's hurt that Anakin didn't tell him. Anakin's scared of how Obi-Wan's going to react, but they both still put their relationship first and not just as master and apprentice, but like as brothers, like that still came first. And they were able to get to the bottom of it together and still preserve that. And so I loved watching them like work that out in that scene. So that was probably my top favorite. And then my other favorite was Obi-Wan and Satine getting a second chance when he finds out that she's alive.
Yeah.
Because you know what? I'll take any explanation for her being alive. I want her to be alive.
Yes. Even if it's the Darksaber has decided that she must live and therefore changed its direction of around her, it's fine. It's beautiful. It's fine. It's Star Wars. Nothing makes sense.
Well, and I also did like how that Darksaber explanation it did because I know that like if we're thinking about Mandalorian season 3 where there were like a lot of questions being asked about like does the Darksaber like actually matter? Like does the Darksaber is it actually cursed? So what is the actual power behind this thing? And with if you're using like a theory like this of the Darksaber like deemed Satine worthy of life, then it's like that gives a whole nother weight to the Darksaber that that we haven't even considered. That's deeper than just the stories behind it.
Oh man, we're changing canon now.
Yeah.
That is the mark of a good fan fiction when you go, I would like to now believe canon is different. Thank you. If you could, because this fan fiction had a lot of different characters brought in different parts. We had Anakin, Padme, Obi-Wan, and Satine, but there was also Ahsoka, which we haven't even touched on, and how she comes into the mix, and it just adds to that family feeling. She's holding the babies, and Luke has connected with her. We get that family feeling, and that everything for Anakin has come together. But what other characters, if any, would you want to add in?
I feel like you know what I'm going to say to this, and it's Qui-Gon Force Ghost.
I actually didn't even see that coming, but I don't know why I didn't see that coming.
I even wrote it in the notes.
I saw orange in there, and I was like, "What? What? Oh,
Yeah,
oh.
I had an immediate answer. Yeah. In our color coded notes, I had to throw that in there. Yes, Qui-Gon Force Ghost. Because okay, and it wouldn't have been totally out of place. Like I know I have to bring up Qui-Gon like every episode, but it wouldn't have even been totally out of place because there is a part where Anakin is saying to Obi-Wan, like, I wanted to live up to Qui-Gon's like expectation of me. Like Qui-Gon had all these hopes and dreams for me. Like I want to live up to that. And Obi-Wan's like, you did live up to it by doing what's right for you and not going down a path that you don't want to go down and staying true to yourself. That's living up to Qui-Gon's plan for you. And Qui-Gon could have just come right in there and been like, yeah,
It
totally.
just popped up in a corner and been like,
right. Couldn't have said it better myself. So yeah,
right.
I would have loved.
Absolutely matched right into the story.
Yeah, I mean, we could have thrown it in there. So you got to have a little Qui-Gon Force Ghost every now and then. Well, okay, I have a question for you now then. Did you have any theories about what happens after the end of the story? Because if we think about where it ends, Palpatine has been defeated, but Anakin and Obi-Wan were planning on leaving the Jedi Order. So, like, what now after that?
Well, hopefully it's not go to a remote island, start your own Jedi Order, and then try to murder your nephew. Because we see how that went in canon.
True. But they're so happy now because they're with their true love. Both of them.
That's true. Maybe they will start their own thing. Now, the author did mention that they were going to write an epilogue, but I didn't go to look to see if there was one.
I don't think that they wrote one yet. I know they said that they might in the future, but the plans were tentative at this point, so.
I would really love to see an epilogue with like the little ones growing up and getting in touch with the Force and really seeing how, because the author was already laying the foundation for their personality and who would be their teacher when they grew older. So I would love to see Ahsoka actually training Luke to see the different perspective, because we already know that Ahsoka's left, and they were very heavy on that she's left the Order. And then there's Obi-Wan who's talking about leaving the Order, but maybe not. I'd like to see how different their teaching styles are and where the kids end up and how it shapes the galaxy.
Yeah, because like, okay, thinking about if they left and did something different, like something cool that this fanfic does is it shows how all the characters in this fanfic attachment, well, the Jedi's definition of attachment, that actually makes them stronger rather than having no attachments. And so it almost makes me wonder if like maybe if Anakin and Obi-Wan decided to go off and do their own thing, if they would start like a new sort of kind of like maybe they wouldn't be Jedi, but something similar where they're kind of taking the code and amending it a little bit and then going from there, because they both still seem very connected to the Force,
right,
and connected to the light, but the Jedi's definition of attachment, it's not going to work for them anymore, it felt like.
Right. Maybe they'll go back and find the books from way back when, because we see in the High Republic that the attachment was dealt with differently. So maybe in the older books they can explain it better.
That's true. Like maybe a previous way of doing things before they got so regimented. Yeah, maybe they could go back to something like that, which would have a more realistic view about, human life and emotions and and how to deal with those things. Okay, I have another question for you.
Oh boy.
So Sabe just spilling the beans like that, just immediately. Okay, I know that she had to tell him, but she had to tell him about the babies are being born, but did she have to tell him they were married? It was like once she started, it was just all spilling out. Did you
I
have
have
any
been
thoughts?
there. It's like, let me tell you this thing. I don't want to tell you the thing. I told you, okay, here's literally everything else, just word vomited out. But no, she absolutely did not have to tell him that. But it was, oh boy. And it
then
was just like
Padme's
one
like,
shock.
and then Padme's like, you told him that? And she's like, oh, I thought he knew. And it's like, well, how could you have thought? I was just laughing at that part because I was like, Sabe, you're not. It's almost like maybe what happened is she got, you know how like when you're panicking, you're not thinking straight. And so it just started coming out because she was just trying to get through to Anakin, and Obi-Wan's like, well, why do you need to talk to him? And she's like, this is time sensitive. Like, please just put me through. And then just bam, it all just comes out. I just thought that was funny.
It was very relatable. I've been there. Okay, so what are we reading next month?
Next month, we are going to be reading The Sith Who Brought Life Day by Ophelia Interrupted. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what that one is?
Absolutely, because I picked it. This is going to be a comedy. It's only 13,000 words. We haven't done a comedy yet, which is really not my style of reading, but I'm excited. It's basically this story about how someone kind of drew the unlucky straw and has to buy Vader a gift for Life Day. And I started reading this, just like looked at the first chapter as I'm like grabbing the link for it. And the first line of this story is, in retrospect, the only way to explain what happened is to point out that I was drunk at the time.
Yeah.
That's how this story starts, and I'm sure it's gonna be fantastic.
That's a great opening line. So I'm on board. I'd like to see where that goes. Can you imagine trying to buy Vader a gift?
That shenanigans will happen.
Yeah, that would be horrible. So I'm excited. That'll be interesting. A little bit. Yeah, it's like you said, we haven't done a comedy. I feel like we've done romance, we've done extreme wholesomeness, and we've done other extreme wholesomeness. So a comedy will be a fun little change of pace.
Oh, sometime we'll do some extreme romance too, maybe. No?
We'll hit all the extremes at some point. That'll be interesting. Okay, well, if you haven't checked us out on Instagram yet, we are on Instagram. That is One Hell of a Fanfic with a period in between every word. And we also post our recordings on YouTube as well. So our YouTube channel is also called One Hell of a Fanfic. And if you like our episodes and you want to keep following us, make sure that you subscribe and like and all of that. So that way y'all can see the content that we're putting out there.
Absolutely. And then you get to see our pretty faces on YouTube.
Yeah. You can see the faces I make when a character does something unpleasant.
Or when your face lights up when you're talking about Qui-Gon Force Ghost.
True. Okay. That too. Okay. All right, y'all. Well, thank y'all so much for joining us, and we will see y'all next month. Thanks so much for joining us at One Hell of a Fanfic. On this podcast, we discuss Star Wars fan fiction, but we do not own the rights to Star Wars or any of the written works we cover. We have no affiliation with Lucasfilm or the fanfic authors we credit for their work. For questions, please email us at onehellofafanfic@gmail.com.